Hi, it's Chris Gabbitas here, Artistic Director of the Phoenix Chorale, and I'm delighted to be speaking with singer, songwriter, and artist Erika Lloyd. Now, Erika is the composer of the song Cells Planets that the Phoenix Chorale performed as part of our Cosmos program last year in 2020, and which was also broadcast earlier this year in our Cosmos broadcast. And what I wanted to do was to have a conversation with Erika about her life as a musician and artist and how she came to write Cells Planets, and then introduce it as a standalone video song so that you could appreciate what a beautiful piece of music it really is. So Erika, hi, thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's good to speak with you. And this was a wonderful song for us to approach. It was actually suggested as a piece of repertoire by one of our soprano singers, Liesl Hill, and she really advocated for it because she loves the Chanticleer recording and the video that they have up on YouTube, which I'd recommend anybody to watch. But of course, I did that, and then I came to your beautiful performance and video of it, and you were an artist that actually I didn't know very much about, and so many audience members loved the song and said, "Who's Erika Lloyd? We don't know who she is." So here we are. Erika, tell us, who is Erika Lloyd and how did you come to be a musician?
Oh my. Well, I guess I was I was doing a lot of different things. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, so I have been mostly just teaching since my son was born, the 1-year-old. But prior to that, I was a choral singer, and I also performed with a small quartet with lute. We did a Renaissance music. And then I also had my own band, which I guess would be considered, I don't know, indie pop or art pop, something like that. Um, I studied, I went to college for early music voice performance. So at Indiana University, it's part of their Early Music Institute. So I had a focus on that. I'm not quite sure what else to talk about.
That's fantastic because I mean I suppose listening to there's definitely a lot of sort of folk and introspective and sort of poetical influence in the lyrics and music, certainly in Cells Planets and in some of your other songs as well. But I didn't realize that you'd gone to IU and done early music. Was that your first love, that sort of Baroque and Renaissance literature?
Was that my first what?
Was that
Sorry.
your first love when it came to choral music at the time?
To be absolutely honest with you, I did not have a very good understanding of music history in high school, and I was basically placed in the Early Music Institute because of my voice type. So I was in a choir, and the director said, "Oh, you've got to audition for the Early Music Institute specifically because of because I'm not light soprano, and I just naturally sang the repertoire intuitively, I guess, and just with a lot of straight tone. And so I was recommended to do it, and I ended up loving it. So I didn't go there with that in mind, really, but I ended up really loving it. And because I was part of that institute, I got to perform with like amazing lute players and viola da gamba players and harpsichordists and just things I had no idea, that I even had those resources available to me, those people available to me when I went to college. So it ended up working very well.
That's great. I mean, it is incredible music, and I can remember when I was singing with the King Singers, we worked with a lady called Christina Pluhar and her ensemble L'Arpeggiata, which is a sort of pan-European ensemble, and she's a lutenist and a viol player, and I loved the purity of tone that these instruments can get when they're supporting a solo voice. It was just the most phenomenal sound, and really it was the pop music of its day, wasn't it? It was the way that they had
Oh
this
yeah.
oral storytelling tradition, and those lute songs really were the sort of the madrigals of the day, which you can extrapolate to the music of the Beatles and the music of other great songwriters of our day.
Right. And when I was there, I couldn't really put it into words, but I realized now that one of the reasons I loved a lot of that art song and the lute song was because to me it felt like our modern day folk music. It didn't feel so affected as opera, I guess, is a way to say it. So to me, it felt so direct and emotional and natural and intuitive. I guess.
Yeah.
But at the time, I probably couldn't have told you that.
But that's interesting because I agree, and I mean, all of these songs deal with the same issues that we face today that they faced 500 years ago: love and loss and war and fighting and sorrow and all the emotions that we have today. Nothing's really changed in 500 years, I suppose. And I agree, it's a very direct way that these madrigalists present text straight into our hearts, really. And I know that you worked with was it Little Grey Girlfriend, the band that you were working with?
Yeah, that was what we called my band. And then eventually, I guess it was 2015, I started to just record as Erika Lloyd. But yeah, that was what we called the band originally.
And did that come out of the early music studies you'd had, this idea that you wanted to be a songwriter in your own right?
I wanted to be a songwriter before that. Yeah, I'd been writing music since I guess middle school maybe. And so and while I was at college, I was still writing and recording as a singer-songwriter the whole time. Kind of, I'm sure that the early music I was performing influenced my songwriting, but it still kind of felt like separate worlds that were happening.
Yeah, I can understand that. Okay. And so Cells Planets, how did that come about? Tell us a bit about the song and what it means to you and where the inspiration came from.
Okay. Well, when I first moved to New York City, right after undergrad, my boyfriend at the time, who is the father of my children, my husband now, so it has a happy ending. He was working on a cruise ship. He's also a musician. He's a pianist, organist, keyboardist. And he is the keyboardist in my band, and he always collaborated with me in my singer-songwriter work. He was working on a cruise ship. I moved to New York City, and all of these things were happening where it was I really just started to get to know him when school ended. And so, the whole part about it, it's just simply, I don't know you, but I like you, all of that. I don't know you that well, but I miss you, I need you. And then I was also, at the time, listening to a lot of radio, and there was this one radio program about trees, and I had no idea how they could they would spread disease in a certain way, but they would also kind of communicate to each other outside of their root systems. And I was just blown away by that. And it was just another example of how interconnected everything is. And also, right before that, one of my studio art classes, we were studying naturally occurring patterns and naturally occurring symmetry. And when you zoom in on things, like the pattern in wood or sand or snowflakes, things like that, and you draw them over and over and over again, all the details, you really, really hyper focus on these little tiny details in nature, and then and you compare it to, thinking about things on a much larger sense, zooming out to the solar system. So it was all of those things combined with the feelings I had about my human relationships of just moving, feeling far away from people, but also knowing how much I needed them and liked them, even if I didn't know them that well. And I also, at the time, I wrote things down about, it's kind of connected, kind of not, about how I knew I would have children, and I've always had that feeling. And like after having children, having that strong feeling of like, oh, but I've known you all along. I knew you all along before you existed. And that kind of feeling of like, I don't know you yet, but I really know I love you. Like, so. And then I ended up marrying the person that it was about, and then we do have 2 children. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's such a great symmetry, and it comes, the circle of that being closed it's lovely. That's a great story. I think the listeners and viewers are really going to identify and enjoy that, because often we want our songs and our songwriters and our poets to voice feelings that we all have, but which perhaps we don't yet understand. And I feel that this song really does that. And I can remember when Liesl in the choir came to me and said, oh, I know we're doing a program about stars and about cosmos. I'd love, do you know Cells Planets? I really want you to think about this. It's just such a meaningful song. It's really impactful. And I think we'd love singing it, and I think the audience would love hearing it. And she was right. And I think we enjoyed it from the very first moment of rehearsing it. And you know, I know Vince Peterson. I know because he's got the wonderful chameleon choral group up in New York City, and he's a fantastic arranger. He's worked with Chanticleer for a long time, and really his arranging skills, partnering with the vision that you had for the song, are kind of the perfect mix. Really, did he approach you, or did Chanticleer approach you to do the arrangement?
They approached him looking for specifically something that was like an indie artist, independent artist that fit into that category of what was it called? Out of This World was the name of the concert. So outer space related, you know. And he said, "Do I have the song for you?" Basically. So Vince, I originally sang for Vince in a church choir, and then I was a founding member of Chameleon. So I had been singing, I guess this is their 13th season, and I'm not with them this season, but I was previously. And Vince always was a fan of mine, you know, as a soprano. He knew me in these choral roles, but he also used to come to all of the Little Great Girlfriend shows. And he was in those, you know, those little tiny dive shows, you know, in the little tiny dive places that we were playing, and he loved the music of the band, so he knew that well. And he's also close friends with my husband. They also work together musically as well, who was in the band. So he recommended it, and so I many people, you know, asked, "Oh, but you weren't well known, you know." When they did when they performed the arrangement, it's like, no, you know, like that does really happen. Like being, you know, isn't that wonderful when someone gives you a chance, when someone listens to you? It worked out wonderfully.
Yeah, and what's sprung from that for you? Have you what has that meant to you that Chanticleer took it and performed it and recorded it, and what kind of feedback have you had?
It's hard to tell these days because music is streamed now. I mean, I noticed that when we did when we were able to travel a bit as a band, people knew who we were in other parts of the country that I don't think they would have had it not been for Cells Planets. But other than that, those worlds are still kind of separate, I think. And also, I just have no way of knowing. I mean, yeah, streaming, I guess, has gone up. But other than that, I don't really I don't know much. Some people contact me. That's been really nice. You know, this is what the song means to me. And they have all of these wonderful stories, you know, and interpretations. And I always said that their interpretations of the song were more interesting than, you know, the meaning I had with it. But yeah, so I guess I also just got so busy with other things that I hadn't really been trying to play as a singer-songwriter for the past couple of years, and I hadn't been trying to travel, and right now we can't.
Well, you've definitely got
I guess
you've definitely got a new group of fans in the Phoenix area. But what we did, we were cheeky with it, because I looked at it and I thought, let's turn it into a conversation between a soprano and a tenor. And so rather than have it as one solo, I did that, and I realized I probably should have asked you if I could do that, and I didn't. I just went ahead and did it. So what do you think of that as a concept? I've changed it again.
I loved it. I loved hearing both of their voices, both of their perspectives. And I told you in the email before, the free riffing, I guess you would call it, you know, at the end, between those voices layered on top. I mean, it just gave me chills. It was just, so talk about directly emotional, you know. I mean, it's just, it was gorgeous. Both of their voices, the ensemble, porting them, it was just so crystal clear, and I got the feeling of a conversation right away, right as soon as the second soloist came in. Like I could feel the back and forth that you were going for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I'm really glad you said that, because I think particularly, I mean, we didn't yet know that there was going to be lockdown. We rehearsed and performed and filmed it last February, so almost exactly a year ago, and we knew coronavirus was happening, but we didn't realize what the ramifications would be. But it's kind of turned into a, a song that I can identify with, because so many people around the world are separated right now. And so to have the soprano and the tenor kind of having this dialogue, and they were out front, but they weren't really communicating with each other. They were communicating with the audience as if separated by sort of metaphorical perspex. And so many people around the world are going through that right now. And I just hope that when people watch this video and listen to it, they can get this message of, we may not be together, we may not know everything we want to know right now, but we're still connected. And that's just the most wonderful thing.
Right. Yeah, it's poignant now. I've spoken to other people about this since everyone has been separate from each other physically. Um, that, the oneness is still there. We're still so connected more than just right now, what we're doing right now online, which is amazing that we can do this. But the connections are so much deeper than that as well. So,
Very much, yeah. Well, we're
yeah.
gonna we're gonna put the video on in a second, and I hope that everybody watching this really enjoys the listening to and watching the video. And I hope you very much enjoyed the conversation that Erika and I have had about it. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to speak with you about your creation, which has just grown and grown and grown, and I'm sure it will continue to do so. And I know how you feel, because I've got three little children and I'm at home. And it is, it's tough, the homeschooling and not being able to do as much music and everything. So, but be reassured that your message is still ringing out loud and clear. And it's been such a pleasure to meet you and speak with you.
It's lovely that people are performing it, and the arrangement by Vince is just takes it to a whole other level. And um, it's really great to hear from you.
It's lovely to meet you, and thank you so much for talking. I really appreciate it.